This Chargers offseason has basically turned into one giant conversation about the middle of the trenches. The draft is begging for reinforcements up the gut. A surprise chunk of cap space could swing the entire interior O-line plan, and there's a center out there giving off every sign he's ready for a new home. And on top of all that, there's one forgotten name who can quietly decide whether you're winning on the edges or sweating out Sundays the hard way. So let me throw this right at the Bolt fam. Do you want the Chargers to spend big to keep Justin Herbert clean? Or do you want them to stay disciplined, pile up value, and build this thing the patient way? Get in the comments with your answer, and if you're into Chargers coverage like this, hit subscribe and drop a like so you don't miss what's coming. Because at the end, I'm circling back to the wildest part of this entire setup. Here's what worries me most. If the Chargers walk into this draft trying to get clever and treat the interior like an afterthought, it's going to snap back on them fast. The roster is screaming the same message over and over. They need bodies in the trenches, inside on the offensive line and inside on the defensive line. Not eventually, right now. That's why those premium picks can't turn into some shiny luxury choice. First round, interior. Second round, same priority. Because when the middle collapses, Herbert loses time, the run game gets suffocated before it even starts, and suddenly your defense is right back out there living in third and long. That's how weeks spiral. Best case scenario, a guard like Olaiva Vega Ioane is sitting there at 22 and you don't hesitate. If he's not, you look at other routes like Peter Woods or Caleb Banks, but the rule stays the same. Spend your best capital where the pain is. That's the base of the whole thing. And once you've actually put real resources into fixing the real problem, then and only then you get the freedom to start taking smarter swings later. Because even with the Chargers missing their 5th and 7th round picks, they've still got a 4th rounder and 2 6ths. That's workable. That's where a sharp front office can take a shot and put something in Herbert's hands that makes defenses play differently. Maybe it's a tight end who can block and also be a real pass-catching option, someone who keeps the playbook balanced. But if Brennan Thompson is still there in the 4th round, that's when it gets interesting. Thompson lit up the combine in the one drill that makes defensive coaches sit upright, the 40. He clocked a 4.26. That's not just fast, that's the kind of speed that forces safeties to change their rules. And it wasn't only a track moment in a clean environment. His last season at Mississippi State, he led the SEC with 1,054 receiving yards, hauled in 57 catches, and hit 6 touchdowns. That's real output. That's not a novelty. And I can already hear the pushback. We've got receivers. Sure, Quentin Johnston, Ladd McConkey, and if Keenan Allen were to return, that's a legit group. But the point isn't that they're slow. The point is you don't have that pure field stretcher who makes a defense back up and creates breathing room for those intermediate throws. A true speed threat changes the space Herbert is operating in. And with the offense trying to find a new jolt under Mike McDaniel, a player like Thompson could help create chunk plays instead of forcing everything to live in tight windows week after week. This is exactly where Bolt fam arguments get heated. One side is going to say, stop playing around, keep feeding the line. The other side is going to say, give Herbert someone defenses actually fear. And honestly, that debate gets louder the second money enters the room, because the next cap move can push this decision right to the front of the offseason. Now let's get into that money turn, because this is where the interior plan starts feeling like it's being written live. The Mekhi Becton experience, with what's being floated out there, looks like it's heading toward the finish line after one season. And I get the instinct. Your first reaction is, okay, roster move. But it's bigger than that. It's accounting. That cut clears about $9.7 million in cap space. Add that to what the Chargers already have, and you're talking about a team operating with roughly $85 million available. And this is where it usually works like a map. When teams cut someone in this window, that money almost always has a destination. It's rarely cap space just to admire on a spreadsheet. In this case, the most logical destination isn't flashy. It's not the kind of thing that blows up a timeline, but it might be the cleanest, most responsible move the Chargers can make. Zion Johnson. Yeah, I know, nobody's throwing a parade for that headline. But if you're trying to avoid a September nightmare, this is exactly the kind of move that prevents it. Johnson took a real step forward last season. You saw growth. You saw him start to look like he belongs as a building block piece. And if you let him walk too, you're basically telling yourself you can rebuild the entire interior offensive line in one offseason. New center, new guard, and that's the kind of gamble that turns into Herbert sprinting for his life by week 3. We've also seen this kind of front office logic before. They've created cap space with one move, then redirected it to keep another important piece in place. That same idea fits here. Cut the struggling piece and use that freed space to retain the guy you believe is trending upward. Then there's the contract reality. There's been some talk that Johnson could climb north of $20 million per year in free agency, and if that happens, it throws a wrench into everything. But the more reasonable expectation is a deal in the $12 to $16 million AAV range. Still a real number, but one you can manage. And if it's structured so the first-year cap hit lands around $9 to $10 million, you basically swap Becton's 2026 cap hit for Johnson's, add stability, and keep the ability to pivot later if you need to. This is the exact moment the fan base splits. Some of you want that Becton money to instantly become an outside splash, a brand new name that feels exciting. I get it. But the other side looks at the interior line and says, stability is the splash. And I'll say it like this. How many seasons have we watched good stretches get derailed because pressure comes straight up the middle? That's not a small problem. That's a season shaper. Even if Johnson comes back though, there's still a massive hole staring everyone in the face. The interior isn't just thin, it's missing a true command center. That's why the center market is the real pivot point of this offseason. I'm going to be blunt. I don't see a bigger roster need for the Chargers right now than center. It's the brain of protection. It's the guy who keeps everything organized so Herbert can actually play quarterback instead of playing survival mode. And as of right now, the interior feels like a blank slate. That's not where you want to be when you're chasing a playoff spot. A lot of fans will immediately jump to the biggest name, Tyler Linderbaum. And I understand it. He's the type who can change standards in a locker room and change what an offensive line believes it can be. But there's a real-world factor here. Historically, the Chargers don't always live at the absolute top of the free agent market. They like value. They like smart spending. So if you're not going to go to the very top, the name that starts to make a ton of sense is Connor McGovern. And the detail that made me pause, like, okay, this matters, is what McGovern has said about how his situation has played out. He's indicated his current team hasn't contacted him once since the offseason started. No check-in, no conversation, nothing. When a player says that out loud, it usually means he already feels the chapter closing. Now think about what that opens up for the Chargers. You've got a veteran center who can steady pass protection, something Herbert benefits from immediately, and you've got the cap space to compete near the top of the market for him. And when you look at his performance profile, it gets even more appealing. He graded in that middle to upper range among centers overall, but his pass protection stood out. A 73.4 pass blocking grade. That's not a throwaway number. That's the kind of floor that helps you survive when elite pass rush shows up in the biggest moments. Does he have the same ceiling as the absolute top option? Maybe not. But the roster building question doesn't go away. Do you want the most expensive name, or do you want the guy who solves the problem at the right price, while you still have other needs to handle? Because if the annual number doesn't start with a 2, the Chargers can make this work. And for a veteran looking for the next spot, Los Angeles checks real boxes. Cap room, a competitive situation, and a quarterback who can win games when things get tight in the red zone. If Buffalo is truly leaving that door open, the Chargers have a clear advantage, money and a path to contention. And while everybody's arguing about guards, centers, and draft picks, I want to go back to the thing I promised at the top, the insane point that doesn't sound insane until you've watched enough football to respect it. Del'Shawn Phillips. He's not the guy who dominates headlines. He's not the name casual fans lead with. But players like this are the connective tissue. Phillips came into the league as an undrafted free agent in 2019. He had to earn every inch. He bounced around, Bills, Jets, Ravens, Texans, and still carved out real value. And the part I respect the most is the reliability. Over the last 5 seasons, he's missed just one game. One. That's preparation. That's toughness. What really jumped last year was his special teams impact. He posted 24 special teams tackles. That's elite production in the phase of football people love to ignore until it bites them. And it wasn't only special teams. He also had his best defensive statistical season with 37 tackles, 1 sack, and a fumble recovery. That's a real year from a player most fans barely talk about. This is why I keep coming back to it. Games get decided by hidden yards, field position, coverage units, the parts that don't go viral. How many times have you watched a team start at the 15 instead of the 30, and suddenly you're in 3rd and long, punting, and handing the other offense a short field? That's where special teams aces quietly swing outcomes. And the best part is it doesn't cost star money to keep that kind of player. The projected market value is around $1.7 million per year, and a 2-year deal a little over $3.3 million. For one of the best coverage players in the league, that's a bargain. That's the kind of move you wish you'd already handled. Yes, there are bigger defensive names to think about retaining. Yes, those conversations matter. But if you want a team that wins tight games at SoFi Stadium, games where everything feels like it comes down to one drive, you don't ignore the invisible pieces that keep the whole operation steady. So I'll put my stance on the table, plain and simple. I only buy this offseason if the Chargers treat the interior like an obsession. In the draft, I'm not getting cute. I'm using premium picks on the trenches and building the foundation. That cap space created by the Becton move, to me, it needs to become stability with Zion Johnson, because trying to rebuild the entire interior in one shot is how you end up panicking in September. And if Connor McGovern is truly there for the taking, I'm pushing hard. A stable center changes Herbert's life. And the insane truth people underrate is this: bringing back Del'Shawn Phillips matters too, because those hidden wins stack up. Now I want it from you. What's your first priority? Hammer the interior early in the draft no matter what?